Hello and welcome to Talking LaLiga. This is match day 22, our weekly recap. I'm Simon Harrison, and as ever I am with David Cartlidge.
Hello guys.
And we've got quite a bit to talk about this week. We've had a bit of a relegation six-pointer. We've had a fiery Catalan derby, which makes a change given that we've had to watch the same game play out repeatedly over the last month or so. And we're going to talk through every game on a game-by-game basis as we do each week, starting with Real Sociedad versus Deportivo on Friday night. Recently, we've been critical of Eusebio, been critical of Real Sociedad, but this 5-0 victory against Deportivo at Anoeta, I mean, it said more about the failings of Depor, really, didn't it? As opposed to anything that La Real did particularly well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you allow La Real in their current predicament to score 5 goals past you, then you obviously have serious problems. And indeed, Depor have those, and it pretty much usually is the goalkeeper, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't help. We've said that they're essentially starting each game with a 1-goal, 2-goal disadvantage, just down to just errors. And you kind of feel sorry for Cristobal, given that, you know, he can't control these things. He can try and organise the team, he can try and balance things, but ultimately, you know, certain things are just outside of his control. This game, the 5-0 defeat, it's his last game in charge. He was sacked. He's now been replaced by Clarence Seedorf, who was last involved in management over in China. He's come in, he said that Zidane had less experience than I do, and look at what he's achieved. Deportivo, not quite the same squad that Real Madrid have.
This is going to be a late Europa League Champions League push or something.
Well, it could be. I mean, it's a strange thing to say, given I can only assume that Seedorf hasn't followed La Liga particularly closely this season, because context-wise, it's not the best time to be complimenting Zinedine Zidane. But, I mean, Depor, they've been quite open in why they've chosen to go with him. There are a couple of other options, but they think that sort of his leadership and basically what he's done as a player can really help out. And that kind of suggests that they think that they do have the tools to get out of the situation they're in. They just need to get the chemistry right. They need to get the balance right in the dressing room. And really, that's what Zidane did well last season. So Seedorf's come in, I mean, he's talking a good game, mentioning what Zidane's achieved, winning, you know, back-to-back Champions League trophies. But at the end of the day, I mean, Depor, they're really struggling in some key areas. And this game, I mean, you mentioned that if Real Sociedad score 5 against them, that is damning. But I think the fact that Real Sociedad kept a clean sheet's even worse.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you know, you just look at how Real Sociedad, their pressing wasn't particularly intense, but Depor were just, you know, brought errors upon themselves, I think, when they were playing out the back. And there were so many times it was easy for Real Sociedad to rub the ball up pretty high, and, you know, it was just a lack of concentration, I think, a lot of the time from Depor throughout, and I think that needs to be addressed. And yeah, from an attacking point of view, they didn't really create anything, and it's strange because they've just lost their key man, Real Sociedad, in Inigo Martinez at the back. And you thought Depor maybe would have tested them more, but they just didn't.
I mean, it was good performance from Real Sociedad. However, you know, it's not time to get carried away. It's only one performance. It's only one result. And I mean, it's against a team that are really struggling too. I mean, 2 goals for Asier Iliaramendi, who continues to have a good season despite the fact that Real Sociedad are kind of up and down. A goal, and he's signed a new deal since for Aritz Olostondo. He's staking a claim to be in the first team plans, to be kept around, as opposed to Hector Moreno, who came in during the January transfer window. But one player that stood out he has stood out all season, albeit that he hasn't had maybe the amount of minutes that we might like to see him have, and that is Igor Zubeldia, who looked brilliant once again in central midfield in this game, only a young midfielder. Eusebio, after the game in his press conference, just basically described him as he's disciplined, that he gives them a balance that they're kind of missing, and do you think that's key? Because, you know, we've talked a lot about the fact Odriozola gets forward, it can leave them exposed at the back, it can leave them, just generally, that they're always, no matter really what stage of the game that they're in, they struggle to control things, they struggle to really kind of close up, and they can't see out games. Do you think Zubeldia is the man that they need now? Because obviously in the past it's kind of just been a go-to that Iliaramendi, David Zuratuza and Javi Prieto, those are the go-to 3 midfield. But I mean, Zubeldia now, he's staking a claim to be a part of that, and someone else has to miss out.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he's the right player, I think, to help Real Sociedad move on. His passing is very sharp. incisive. He can play it over different distances. And I just think he's a really, really smart player as well. And Eusebio was right to point out his discipline, I think. And he's a good player to have in there. He links everybody together really well. And he's probably a key part of things moving forward, I would think.
Right, so we'll move on to Saturday's games. The first of which, at Iparua, Eibar beating Sevilla 5-1. I mean, it was perceivable that they would pick up a good result in this game, given that Sevilla, they've got one eye on their Copa del Rey semi-final second leg against Leganés, where it's still all to play for, really. But I mean, a 5-1 scoreline. We mentioned that there has been a reaction since Montella came in. Obviously, to begin with, against Cadiz in the Cup, they just did what they had to do. Then losing against Betis, they looked really, really poor. And from there, I mean, they looked to have turned a bit of a corner, but this result, there was nothing positive to say about Sevilla whatsoever.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they considered the first goal after 37 seconds. They were 2-0 down after 15 minutes. And then that's, in Ibarua, which is one of the most difficult places to go this season. The Eibar's home record there is very good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they've lost now just one of their last 9 at Iparua. Yeah. I mean, earlier on in the season, when they struggled to maybe get going, it wasn't quite the fortress. But I mean, now with the terrible weather, with the fact that it's a small pitch, I mean, big teams are really struggling to go there. And it won't only be Sevilla that are dropping points there before now the end of the campaign.
Exactly. They just played, Eibar were just very, very direct in the way they played over the transitions, and they really just went for the jugular. Quite frankly, I think they saw that there was a lot of changes, a lot of disorganisation in this Sevilla team. They took advantage of that, and it's always good to see. I think a team when they identify a weakness and they go for it. And Inui had a very good game, and I would probably say new man Oriana was man of the match though.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he is continuing to show that there was definitely still a player there. It would be interesting to see now whether Marcelino would have let go of him, given that Valencia have so many injury problems of their own out wide at the moment. But he offers them something different they didn't previously have. It's obviously interesting for Mendilibar to still have, even when Oriana starts, he has even Alejo in reserve. He can bring him on. He offers a new kind of explosivity that maybe Oriana, he's not got that same physical edge. But, I mean, he's just looked really sharp, as have all of Eibar's players for the last month or so now. Jose Angel doing well in this game. I mean, a few balls with the outside of his boot that a lot of players would have been proud of. He's now got 7 assists in LaLiga, which is the most for any other defender. And just from back to front, it was just a really solid performance from Eibar. We've mentioned obviously Inui playing well, Jose Angel playing well, but similarly they had Ruben Peña at right back, who's not bad for putting a ball in, and De Capra on the bench. He could have come on at right back as well and done the same job. You've got Ana Sarbia, who's good from set pieces, who's good delivering from deep. I mean, this Eibar team can really hurt you if you can't set up properly.
They've got a good squad there, I think. Considering the budget they have, they still operate, and just to give people a bit of perspective of what's going on, Eibar operating on about €40 million season, budget a season, and Sevilla, for example, are on just over 200 million. So for Eibar to build a very, very good squad that is competing, it is just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, Sevilla, they basically brought in more quality on deadline day than Eibar have probably managed to over the last couple of years sort of thing. But Roque Mesa, Miguel Layún and Sandro all making their debuts. Layún really had a torrid time at right back, really, really did struggle. Nico Pareca making his first appearance in La Liga since about September time. He really struggled too, and it just seemed like Montella underestimated Eibar from start to finish. And as you say, I mean, given how modest Eibar's budget is, it's just all the more impressive. And when they've got players like Takashi Inui coming in from Frankfurt, really taking a gamble and taking a pay cut to come and play in Spain, it's good to see these things working out. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see going into the summer if they can maintain this kind of challenge for the Europa League, as they kind of fell away at the last hurdle last season. It'll be interesting to see who they can attract, because obviously financially, they can't offer the most, but in terms of consistent football, exciting football, and potentially European competition, they've definitely got a lot to give players. We'll move on to the second game on Saturday, which was Real Betis against Villarreal. A 2-1 win for Real Betis, and that makes it now, it's only 2 wins in their last 7 at the Benito Villamarín in La Liga. But there was a nice little story on the day. 2 goals from debutant Loren. I mean, he's he has started for their B team. He's scored around 17 goals or so this season across his debut, and then also playing for the B side. Can we expect to see a lot more of him? I mean, obviously Antonio Sanabria is out injured for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. It's key you mention him, because from what I was reading midweek, Setien privately has wanted a player like Sanabria about, and he feels that Lorraine can offer conditions that Sanabria does. And I'm not even talking about goal scoring. The kid scored 2 goals, so fair play. But he wasn't really brought in for that. He was actually brought in basically to attack space from wide areas, to hold up the ball a little bit better, to drill some crosses into the box, because there was a feeling that Sergio Leon was unable to do that, and he basically just needs to be in the box. He needs to be kind of like, just roaming about, waiting for chances rather than outside, and that's why Lorraine was brought in. So the fact that she got 2 goals is brilliant, really. Yeah, I mean,
it's good to see that Setien is continuing with his ideology, and he's trying to promote youth wherever possible. He said when he came into the job that, that was something that he was looking to do, and he's really stuck to that. I mean, we've seen the likes of Francis, we've seen Narvaez, who has now gone out on loan and did actually score on the weekend in Segunda. But it's just good to see, a coach that he's not necessarily expecting results overnight. He's prepared to give these young players a chance. And I mean, it was a dream debut for Lorraine. He showed a lot more, I guess, maturity than one other seasoned veteran on the field, and that was Daniele Bonera. I mean, sent off after around half an hour, really left Villarreal in the lurch. Yeah. They struggled to recover after that, and, a player of his years, of his seasons, playing for the clubs that he's played for, I mean, what on earth was he thinking?
I don't think he was.
I think that's the problem.
That's what it was. I mean, I've never seen anybody extend it. I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion about Sergio Roberto midweek on Andres Pereira, but the extension of Bonera's leg was far more than Sergio Roberto. It was just ludicrous. I almost thought Bonera was going to hurt himself. He stretched his leg out that much.
He was the most flexible he's looked in years, I
think.
Yeah,
I was going to say. And it's just absolutely remarkable. Why do you need to make that challenge? It was just idiotic. It really was. It's probably one of the worst challenges I've seen this season. It was so high. At one point, I really did think it was going to come up to Ruben Castro's neck. It was that high. And it was a good decision. And it was, again, this referee was in charge as being my favourite this season. He's being 26 years old, and he, he did it straight away. That was it, and that was impressive to see.
I mean, Villarreal, given that in January they did do some deals, it was kind of to, accommodate for the fact that Cedric Bakambu was leaving. Should they have looked at another central defender? I kind of feel like they are a little bit light.
I think they need 2.
I mean, they did bring in Ruben Semedo during the summer. Yeah. He's had injury problems on and off. Curiously enough, he kind of had his best performance in a Villarreal shirt playing in central midfield. And I just don't think they've got enough cover. I mean, Alvaro Gonzalez has been struggling with some hamstring problems recently, so it's kind of left Victor Ruiz in there to partner up with whoever. And Bonera just doesn't look good enough. I can understand that they might want to keep him around for his experience, to maybe come in for the odd game here and there when the stakes aren't high whatsoever for rotation purposes. Yeah. But, I mean, in a game like this,
he shouldn't be playing against an intense Betis side who were going to try and pull you and twist you around. And like you could see, it was him. He came wildly out as well. Do you know what I mean? Ruben Castro wasn't in the penalty area or anything like that. He was quite some more distance out. And it was just a stupid decision to make to do that. And, yeah, I think they need 2 centre-backs, even because, I mean, I thought they needed 2 centre-backs anyway on top of, but then Semedo hasn't worked out, and things have gone on with him off the pitch. So, his future looks very unlikely. He'll probably end up back in Portugal or something. So yeah, I would buy 2, absolutely.
I mean, Betis, they had their own sort of debutant in central defence, a player where when we kind of saw that he was potentially going to be moving earlier in the transfer window, we said that, the likes of Villarreal, Sevilla, Betis, they needed to be looking at him, and that's Marc Bartra. We've already talked a bit about what we think about the deal on our most recent January transfer special podcast. But I mean, this debut was just solid. He was just comfortable with the ball, without the ball. I mean, a couple of times even driving forward and looking to make play happen. He looks like he's just going to fit right in straight away.
And that's what they need. There's not very many signings that will occur on the market for a club that could come in and then just fit in effortlessly. But Bartra is that, because he knows that style, he knows what to do, he knows what Setien wants. Setien wouldn't even have to say anything to him. He would have watched one Betis game and he'll thought, right, I know what I have to do in this team. And that's just such a rare thing. And for Betis to get somebody of his quality, never mind the skill set that he actually has, but his actual quality is just brilliant for Betis, and I think should carry them on. And it's just a shame what also occurred to another centre-back that game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks all the more vital that they have brought in Bartra, given that Zoer Fadal, he's been playing with Achilles problems for a while now, on and off, but never too serious, always just about enough to be able to play, just about to be able to get through it. And in this game, I mean, he came off injured, immediately needed surgery. He's going to be out for around 6 months. And really, Fadal was the centre-half where we were thinking, okay, Bartra can come in and play alongside Fidel, because Fidel has been the only sort of solid presence at centre-half that Betis have had all season. It's kind of been the likes of Isamandi or Alan Tosca, Jordi Amat. All of these players have been the ones sort of letting him down or, being a bit erratic. And now it's kind of Bartra. He's come straight in. He was expected to do a big job anyway. And now he's sort of got to cobble it together once again.
We've seen with Pep Guardiola in England with Manchester City, the reason he spends so much money, the reason he brings these players in is to make sure the system works correctly. Obviously, Betis don't have that luxury. They're kind of playing a system that is very difficult for most players. And Setien needs players that suits the requirements of that, and Bartra is one of those players.
Right, so we'll move on to Alaves against Celta Vigo. Alaves at home at Mendizorroza, which has been a complete fortress since Abelardo has taken over. Now they're 5 games unbeaten there. Looking into the future, their next 5 games at home in the league: Deportivo, Levante, Real Betis, Getafe and Girona. Only Girona have really got a good away record out of all of those teams this season. Do you think that Abelardo could have them safe purely off the back of what they can do in front of their own fans?
Yeah, completely. And they do look such a good team when they're at home, and I think the confidence what they have right now, there's no problem with them. I think possibly turn into some away form. That's just how these things work. But I'm really impressed with them, and they're always good to watch, and they're actually quite exciting, I think, with some of the players they've got. Yeah,
they look to be very vertical, very intense. They like to try and win the ball high if possible, just to get the ball up to the other end as quickly as possible. And obviously when you've got the likes of Pedraza, who's very explosive, Ibai Gomez, who's probably in the best shape of his life really after training so hard, and he looks really just bullish and strong now. He's really, really tough to deal with and knock off the ball. But one player, 4 goals and 2 assists in his last 5 home La Liga games. That's Munir. And Munir came in, there was a lot of expectation. Obviously he's played a fair amount in La Liga before. He's shown that he can compete at this level. Coming in alongside Bojan as well. It hasn't worked out for him whatsoever. But, Munir, he's got to be thinking that, he's going to earn himself a decent move after this season.
Yeah, you would think so. So overall, that's 5 goals and 5 assists now for him for the entire season, which is just excellent. I think for him, it's more than any of his previous seasons with any club, including Barca. So it's really is excellent, I think, from him. And I think this development with him is impressive to watch, and seeing how he's grown as a footballer. I think his movement has always been very good. He currently looks just excellent under Abelardo and what he requires. He's working very hard in games. He's tracking back a lot as well, and he is just such a very good component, I think, for a team. And a lot of people are going to be interested in him. And we've seen Barca, they like to get a profit on players. They have no problem selling on these players. We've seen it with De La Feu, for instance, recently when he went away. And they obviously brought him back, but I think they'll do the same with money. They're probably just going to sell him on, I think, because there's going to be Premier League clubs willing to pay a fair, decent amount of money for him.
Well, those 3 points for Alaves, it takes them up now to 22 points from 22 games. They're 2 points off 17th place Levante. They're now 5 points clear of the relegation zone, with both Deportivo and Las Palmas on 17 points. It's looking like a good enough gap already. And they can still pull in the likes of Espanyol, the likes of Real Sociedad. Things are just really that tight down the bottom. It's not really... It would be more likely for, Alaves to finish in mid-table, even top half, than it would be for sort of Las Palmas or Deportivo to clamber out of the relegation zone. It's kind of crazy how things are working out this season. But, Abelardo, when he came in, we were quite damning really and thinking that this was kind of Alaves sinking, and they've done anything but. And it'll be interesting to see. I mentioned before they've got 5 very, very winnable games coming up at home. If they can win all of those, given the fact that a lot of teams are struggling for consistency from around probably 10th place, 12th place and below, there's no reason why they can't keep climbing. We'll move on to an unexpected result, and yet it was kind of expected at the same time, and that is Levante 2, Real Madrid 2. I say unexpected because I didn't expect Levante to score 2 goals, but I say expected because Real Madrid dreadful again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult to find new ways of expressing how poor Real Madrid have been and what's going wrong, because it's evident what is going wrong, I think. But on this instance, I guess, Zidane had a full disposal, everything at his disposal for this game. full squad, no injuries or anything like that. You could have picked anybody you wanted. And then there were still things in that starting 11 that, just left you scratching your head a little bit. Particularly the Nacho omission, who's been probably, I think I would say, in the top 3 best players of Real Madrid this season. I understand the standards aren't particularly high, but Nacho has been very, very good. And luck would have it that Sergio Ramos, the guy who came in for him, was pretty much at fault for both goals.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've talked, in the past about Diego Simeone. He always likes to go back to his old guard, the players that have been with him for a while, that have won trophies with him. If Zidane stays around, I mean, it looks as though he's going to do the same thing. Whenever they're going through a bad run of form, he kind of sticks to his guns, sticks to the old guard, sticks with Benzema, Bale, Cristiano Ronaldo in a front 3 where he can. Obviously, whenever Sergio Ramos is available, whenever Varane is available, they're going to come in regardless of, whether there's other players, such as Nacho, who are playing well. I mean, it's just, it's really, really stagnant. I mean, I can't see anything other than them really, really struggling against PSG in the knockout stages. And if they don't pick up a good result across those 2 legs, Zidane's just got to go. I mean, there's no point retaining faith in the same methods and the same players when they're just not performing. And I mean, you can say that the likes of Nacho has been quite good this season. A positive has been that Akraf has looked good since making his debut and coming in at right back. Luka Modric, he's a player that's looked good. I mean,
he's one of the few who has retained the level from this period of success that they had.
Yeah, and then aside from that, I mean, you see flashes of Marcelo, you see flashes of Toni Kroos. We've seen a little bit of Bale here and there. But I mean, Benzema, in the first half of this game, showed a little bit of something and then faded. Yep. Cristiano Ronaldo, I mean, I'm just not convinced by him at all this season either. They just look extremely, extremely ordinary. And I think to look ordinary against a team like Levante, it's unforgivable, really. I mean, Levante have struggled, and it's kind of the nail in the coffin in terms of Zidane, where you've got a player like Gianpaolo Pazzini coming off the bench for his debut, and he's the one to resign you to a draw against a team that can't seem to pick up any positive results for love nor money at the moment. I mean, if it was down to you, I mean, would you just give Zidane until the PSG tie, or do you think that it would be a bit crazy to assume that things are going to turn around just because it's Real Madrid and just because it's the Champions League?
Yeah, it is a difficult position actually to be in, because you could get rid of him now, bring somebody in, restore confidence, restore morale before those PSG games, and then go on the PSG games with a fresh outlook. But the difficulty, I think, with that is basically hoping that you do generate that, that good feeling again at the club. And also, there's probably a few players still very much by Zidane's side, I think, considering the success that they have experienced together. So that encounters a problem there. But then I think also if you retain Zidane, you keep him, then that lull could continue, and then you almost write yourselves off for that tie against PSG, which is Real Madrid in the Champions League. You simply can't be written off. But that is where they are right now. A lot of people are just writing them off. And that's troublesome. So I would probably see what he got. I would reluctantly give him the games against PSG, and then if they are beaten in a manner that is quite convincing, then I think then they have to act. Yeah,
it's bizarre given that he's been so poor in La Liga and so poor in the Copa del Rey that Real Madrid have got no hope to win anything else aside from this one competition that Zidane has experience in winning back to back, making history. So really, he's kind of holding on to his job off the back of being so poor in other competitions that Real Madrid are just hoping to win one trophy. And with this generation of players at this stage of the season, there's no way that they should be limited to just one competition. It's obscene. But I mean, I would agree. I think that just purely down to his record and the fact that I think the players will fight for him down to this record and the history that they've made in the Champions League, we might see some kind of, they might look a little bit like the side that we saw last season, or there might be a bit of that mentality where you always thought they were going to score. But, I mean, the form book, logic, sense, it all kind of points towards PSG winning by potentially a bit of a landslide. Yeah. We'll move on to Sunday's games. An absolute classic in one of the derbies of the weekend in Spain. Getafe against Leganés, 0-0. Leganés obviously with one eye on their second leg against Sevilla in the Copa del Rey, albeit that they didn't really rest all too many players. But it's a good away point for them. I mean, Getafe are now unbeaten in 8 games at home at Coliseum Alfonso Perez. It's a really tough place to go. It was dreadful weather. I mean, snowing. Spain went a little bit crazy in terms of climate this weekend. And I mean, even snow in Madrid. I mean, this isn't something that we see a great deal. But, I mean, there's not too much to say about this game. It's two teams. They play in a similar fashion. They both like to limit the opposition to the point where, a goalless stalemate.
Yeah, exactly. This was just such a forgettable game. And like you said, I think Leganes, they just wanted to keep tight and not avoid injuries and not do anything too crazy because with this big game coming up. And then Getafe are never, ever going to try and blow you out the water either. They're another team who do focus primarily on not losing the game first and foremost. So yeah, they just cancelled each other out and it was a very, very poor and forgettable game.
Yeah, I mean, good to see Ruben Perez getting half an hour in the second half off the bench. He's been struggling with injury lately. So they're bringing him into the game, see if he'll be 100% ready for the Cup. Gabriel wasn't involved in this game either. I mean, they're just making sure that they've got their key men available for Wednesday, sorry. But I mean, all in all, it's a better result for Leganés than it is for Getafe, given that Getafe is so strong at home. Leganés really quite poor away for the last month or two. Yeah. But as we say, I mean, the focus was kind of more on the Copa del Rey in this game, and Getafe aren't even in it. We'll move on to another derby, which was just really ill-tempered, similarly dreadful weather, and that was Espanyol versus Barcelona, a 1-1 draw. We've seen a fair amount of this game, obviously, given the fact that in the Copa del Rey quarterfinals we saw 2 legs. We saw Oscar Melendo give Espanyol a 1-0 win at Cornellà in that tie, and Espanyol have proven at home to be a real nuisance for Barcelona. But rather than the football, I think that what you wanted to focus on a bit more in this game was everything but.
yeah, it was just a good war, quite frankly, between the two of them, and everything had been created off the back of those. I think, the Espanyol chants towards Piqué's response to them. Busquets, I think, also said something, untoward. And I don't know. Espanyol fans can't complain about, the gesture from Piqué. It was a big talking point over the weekend. Or what was Piqué's gesture? Was it the right thing to do? And basically, all he did was put his finger on his lips. And who cares? I mean, it's a derby game. This derby, it's the one, for me, I said to somebody, it's pretty much one of the worst derbies in the world. There's just no real spice there. Barcelona win it all the time. And question marks over Espanyol fans as well, and things like that. And it's just not a very, very good derby, quite frankly. So the fact that this kind of took a turn for the worse and got a little bit toxic, I thought was interesting. I'm all for what Piqué did. I'm all for that, and it's good that he hit back at that, because fans have to realise they can't just dish it out, say that somebody's children should die or whatever like that, or, and say things about Piqué's wife and then not expect anything in return. It's just stupid. And I mean, then Gerard Moreno's challenge as well, which was just... I've never seen anything like it. He must have ran a good 15 yards. You
could have picked him up and put him in the Six Nations, and he probably would have been more at home.
Exactly. And then, but I mean, the only thing, we'll sit, and then it kicked off a little bit at the end as well. And Umtiti's usually quite a calm, collected guy. And I would say the one thing that obviously has no place is if it is true that Sergio Garcia has made racial remarks towards Umtiti. Obviously, that is just absolutely, just disgusting. And hopefully something is done about that if Sergio Garcia is found out or has said those things. But otherwise, generally speaking, it is nice to have seen this game just have a little bit of a different edge about it.
I mean, obviously, Barcelona is still unbeaten in LaLiga, but to have kind of just, I suppose, underwhelmed twice against Espanyol within the last month, obviously losing 1-0 in the Cup, and then also drawing this game 1-1. They did try and obviously rest Lionel Messi. He started on the bench. They brought him into the game a bit later on. Obviously, they've got one eye on their cup game against Valencia. But on top of that, I mean, soon in the Champions League, they'll be going up against Chelsea, who are also in the lurch a little bit in England at present. But, I mean, Valencia, they'll be feeling a little bit confident, I think. Given that they went to Camp Nou in the first leg, I mean, they really made things difficult. The fact it was only 1-0, that was almost an achievement in itself, given how that Barca have rolled teams over. Yeah. And then in this game as well, Espanyol kept things tight. They stayed deep. They were just really, really tough to play through. And obviously the elements played a role in making it even harder.
It was ridiculous, the second half, the way it really did affect. I mean, when somebody as good as Busquets is getting deceived by the water.
Yeah, I think Messi even needed a snorkel.
I was going to say it did become really, really crazy towards the end, I think, with the water on the pitch. But yeah, Espanyol just did what they usually do and just frustrate, keep things tight, and they got a very, very decent result in the end.
Right, so we'll move on to Girona versus Athletic. Girona winning 2-0 at Montilivi. Obviously, it's something of a fortress this season, but they have been equally as tough to break down away. It's kind of more down to what Pablo Machín has got his squad doing and the system that they use as opposed to where they play most of the time. But, I mean, Athletic, I think, were kind of conscious of this, and Cuco Ziganda came into this game wanting to change things, looking for more control, and it really didn't work. I mean, a 2-0 defeat, they probably expected to lose, to be honest, travelling to Montilivi. But, I mean, I really struggled to see what Ziganda was up to in this game. Throughout the season in general, I mean, I found myself being very critical of him. I don't really think long-term he should be anywhere near the job that he's in. And in this game, he kind of abandoned all the principles that he's used, up to this point tactically. Because normally, they'd play four at the back, they'd have two central midfielders kind of protecting, and they look to just try and be direct. And in this game, I mean, they almost tried to match Girona up of sorts. They went with three central defenders. They had Inigo Martinez making his debut after joining from Real Sociedad, alongside Uri returning from his long layoff, obviously battling against cancer. Great to see him back involved. And also Unai Nunez, who hasn't played as part of a defensive three at all this season. Throw into that the fact Inigo Leque playing as a right wing back, and a debutant as well at left wing back in Andoni Lopez, who gave away an early penalty. And I mean, it's absurd to change your system, and it's absurd to do it when you've got Uri coming back after a long time out. Inigo Martinez never played with this group of players before, and Andoni Lopez never played in LaLiga before. I mean, what was Ziganda thinking?
He was just really badly judged, I think. I don't think Girona was the surroundings, I think. To test things out, basically, especially when you're in Athletic's current state, I think they still don't really have any true identity about them under Ziganda. So for him to try it here didn't make much sense at all, and the factors that you have used contributed to that, and then just the fact that it was against Girona, who were very, very good at home. And again, it was just another bad decision that puts a big question mark again over Ziganda.
I mean, after the game, in his press conference, he said, we have three central defenders that know how to play. We have the players to use this system. I'm convinced of that. We look for a different way of playing to see if we could have more control. If we could play out from these three central defenders and then through Iturraspe and Beñat. I mean, I didn't even mention that before, but Beñat hasn't been included in the plans of Ziganda at all this season. And he was thrown in as well. And supposedly, several of these players that are coming in rusty, coming in that won't be fully match fit, they're expected to play out from the back against a really intense Girona who press well, who work well as a unit, and really all that they needed to do was put pressure on these central midfielders, and it left Athletic really struggling for options, needing to go long, playing up to Raul Garcia and Iñaki Williams as a front two, which again is, I don't know whether Ziganda, he woke up and had some kind of premonition that this was something that he needed to do on this given weekend. But, I mean, it was just strange from back to front. They deserved to lose. It was a shame to see that Andoni Lopez giving away that early penalty on his debut. But Stuani, again, converting from the spot. Then later on, some more bad defending. I mean, Porto shouldn't have been allowed to put in a cross from the right-hand side. And when he did, both Leque and Uri just weren't switched on. And it allowed for Stuani to come in and score his sixth header goal this season. He's now got 12 for the campaign. And he continues to look fantastic. And funnily enough, he'd be brilliant for this Athletic side if they were able to sign him, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Stuani's been brilliant, from considering he had such a torrid time at Middlesbrough. But he was always impressive, I thought, when he was given continuity at Espanyol, and he's definitely he's a lead man at Girona. And yeah, he's just been prolific. He's been really, really good.
I mean, with Athletic, I really do think that they've just got to try and get through to the end of this season without, one, embarrassing themselves in a manner as they kind of did in this game. I mean, afterwards, Ziganda said that he didn't like how they were playing. Well, funnily enough, you're the one who has the power to do that, Cuco. And also, Uriah said that he doesn't like how they're playing at present either. I mean, the only positive for them was that Uri came back. It was great to see him return, and especially with it being World Cancer Day too. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was fantastic for that in terms of symbolism as well. But I mean, Girona, it's just another team that's sort of underestimated them, and it's a testament to them as well that teams are coming to Montilivi and they're trying to change how they play because they're scared of Girona. I mean, when the season started, I don't think they would have really expected that to happen. Maybe they would expect to frustrate teams, but they're forcing teams to come with a plan B to a team who are newly promoted. It's their first season in Primera. And again, I mean, Pablo Machin, we've talked a lot about Asier Garitano doing a great job this season, but I mean, Pablo Machin, he's got to be up there too.
Yeah, I think it's Garitano, Machin, and then potentially Bordalas, who've just done fabulously. But it's probably between Machin and Garitano who wins Manager of the Year.
Right, so we'll move on to Atletico Madrid versus Valencia, the final game on Sunday night. Obviously, second place against third place, but a 1-0 win, another binary result for Diego Simeone's men, where he kind of was playing a bit more cheerleader than manager towards the end, as we can expect at the Wanda. They maintained their unbeaten run at home. Valencia now lost 5 consecutive games in all competitions. Marcelino's side, it's looking really flat for them. They're struggling with injuries. Guedes was missing for this one. Obviously, Jason Murillo too. If it hadn't have been for a fantastic save from Neto in the first half, then they could have gone behind to a Diego Costa header. And, well, if it wasn't for a punch from Neto, then maybe Diego Godin would still have a full set of teeth. I mean, what did you make of this game? From how Valencia set up, I mean, they were looking to play 2 banks of 4. They were looking to be tough to beat. And it left them just toothless in attack. I mean, sorry to Godin for the pun, but they really struggled to create anything of note. And 7 changes from the side that went to Camp Nou in the Cup. It was a tough ask to get anything from it, but I think the manner of this defeat was the most disappointing thing rather than anything else for Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, we've made the point that they're looking a little bit timid at the moment. And it came to a head here, I think. They were extremely defensive. They were extremely, unaware of contributing on the offensive end. And I think Marcelino admitted after the game, that the injuries that have come in, the rotation, there's a lack of freshness about the team at the moment. For the first time, morale, confidence has taken a bit of a knock. The strikers aren't scoring as prolific as they normally were, I think. And they very much focused on defense, and Marcelino very much focused on being defensive here. And like you say, keeping those 2 banks of 4 very, very tight. And not playing really an attacking strategy purely because of these players that they are missing. I mean, they didn't have Guedes here, and that's a big factor, I think, for them over the attacking transitions. If he isn't there, they don't really transition as well. They don't move out of their defensive shape into an attacking shape as well. So they played this game hoping to get something, I think, on the break, and one of the few chances that they would get. And it just didn't transpire for them, and Atleti were very much comfortable in the end, I thought.
Yeah, well, it was interesting actually during the transfer window, right at the very, very start of this year. I think it was Cadenacer that visited Mestalla, and they sort of were asking Marcelino what he would like for the rest of the season while he was alongside their director, Mathieu Almany. And I think they were kind of expecting him to reply and say something along the lines of, well, I'd like a couple more players. But all that Marcelino actually said was, I don't want any injuries. We can't be dealing with injuries. And that's all they've had to put up with. For the
He likes a small squad though, Marcelino. He's always been a man who likes a small squad, and he made that choice. That I think they might have got him a few more players if he wanted to, but he just didn't want to do that. He'd rather call upon the guys out the B team, for instance. So he has to take the blame with that one, if you want to call it blame. But it's his decision to go with that. And I think they probably have got a decent enough squad to compete, but it is the fact that when they do lose those players, because as a team, you can't avoid injuries all year. You're going to get some that hamper you, and you have to replace them adequately with what you have got. I don't think Valencia have probably got the adequate players to step in. If they lose Guedes, that they haven't really got a like for like to replace him. And again, that comes back to their attacking strategy. They can't play their actual game when the players who make it so deadly aren't there.
Yeah, I mean, normally they would rely on their wide men in midfield to help lead the attack. In this game, Tony Lato on the left-hand side, Nemanja Maksimovic on the right-hand side. It was really just limited. It left Santi Mina and Zaza looking quite isolated up front. And Mina, even though he tried to battle, he tried to hold the ball up, he's not, especially when he's so far from the opposition goal, he's not the man that you really want to be doing that.
It's it's just very different to what you started the season with. So you've just said there, they had Lato and Maximovic in wide roles. They started the season with Guedes and Carlos Soler in the wide roles, and then Zaza and Rodrigo up top. None of those players were present apart from Zaza, and they can't operate in that manner and then expect the same results. So you're going to get some major drop-off, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, well, with you saying that he likes to keep a small squad, I mean, they were looking at potentially bringing in one more player before the end of the window, but that would have meant that Maximovic would have gone out to one of the likes of Getafe, Espanyol, and I find it quite strange. I mean, I would think that they need maybe, a couple more wider options. I think they're completely stacked in attack. Yeah. I mean, they have the likes of, obviously, Zaza, Rodrigo, Santimina, Luciano Vieto's come in and made an impact in the cup at least. They're fine for options there. It's kind of in this game, you had Carlos Soler on the bench. Maybe you didn't want to start him from the very off because, he is quite recently back from being out for about a month or so with a sprained ankle. Pereira out after that challenge that we mentioned earlier with Sergio Roberto. He'll be out for 3 weeks. You've got Guedes, who's come back to training after the game against Atletico, looking to be fit to play against Barcelona in the cup. And as you say, I mean, they just didn't have that drive. They didn't have anything to penetrate. And really, it was quite an easy day at the office, all told, for Atleti.
Yeah, they needed Valencia needed very much short, I think, of a direct wide presence. Somebody who can just drive players, like Inui does for Eibar, Mane does at Liverpool. Just a very, very direct player, and you know exactly what you're getting with them. They just don't have it at the moment. I
mean, one direct player that definitely provided, well, he provided the winning goal.
Yeah.
Angel Correa. I mean, he is the kind of player that I think would do very well at Valencia if he was playing out wide. I mean, for me, he's got to be going to the World Cup, really. I mean, he's continued this. He's shown that he can play in a variety of roles. He's shown that wherever that he is deployed, that he's prepared to put the work in. He's prepared to track back. I mean, it's not been, alien to see him making challenges on the edge of his own penalty area this season. But, I mean, the strike, Neto had absolutely no chance. And it just shows what confidence he's got in himself this season.
Yeah, I think the pennies finally dropped with him. I think, he's been a frustrating player for a long time. I think he goes a lot of blind alleys, but I think sometimes you accept it with him because when you have Correa on the field, you get a little bit more drive, a little bit more ambition. He's willing to make... Atleti haven't got a player like him, basically. Right now, and the way he drives at people, and he's willing to take that risk. And okay, he does lose the ball, but you kind of accept it. I think sometimes people say the same about Alexis Sanchez as well. He loses the ball a lot, but you are willing to accept it because he's a player that can make things happen. Correa is exactly that type of player. And yeah, something has changed with him. I think he finally seems like an Atleti player now, and Simeone does trust him a lot more than he used to.
I mean, we mentioned earlier the fact that PK shushed some fans. There was a similar sort of talking point in this game at the Wanda, but it was, well, different in terms of the fact that Griezmann was shushing kind of his own fans. Towards the end of the game, while on a breakaway, obviously the fans kind of wanted them to kill off this game with it being just 1-0.
Yeah.
But Griezmann drove and then turned back and took the pressure off and made sure that Atleti kept hold of the ball and saw out what was a fantastic 3 points,
which was the right thing to do.
Absolutely,
from Griezmann. And the fans have opinions again, but
they can be wrong.
yeah, exactly. What happens if he drove on? Atleti pushed up, put 2 or 3 numbers up. They lost the ball, and then Valencia actually got one of those counter-attacks going in a position where they maybe had a man over, and then it was 1-1. What would the fans be saying then? Oh, Griezmann should have maybe held on the ball, they should have dragged it back and wasted some time. So you can't really win, that's the problem. So Griezmann did exactly the right thing. Atleti's success has been based off using tactics like this, so you can't complain. It's simple as that. Landry.
Well, Atleti taking 3 points in this game, that means that given that this was a game between second and third in La Liga, they now have a 9-point cushion over third place Valencia. Valencia, despite having, lost their last 3 consecutive games, everyone else below them is performing so badly that they're still in third. They've still got a 1 point, they could still be overtaken by Real Madrid once they eventually play the game in hand that they've managed to, basically when they went to the Club World Cup, they missed their game against Leganés. They can leapfrog them if they win that game, but at the minute that's not really a guarantee whatsoever. And you've got the likes of Villarreal, Sevilla, on and off, hot and cold. Valencia, they're in a precarious situation, aren't they? That they're kind of at the head of about 3 or 4 teams where they're inconsistent, they're not quite hitting their stride. But down to that, even if a couple of them sort of pull their socks up, recover from some injuries, put together some form, and Valencia could find themselves sliding down towards 5th, 6th, and I mean, it would be a real shame, given how they started the season, to just completely miss out on European football altogether.
Oh my! I think it would be a disaster, because I think they put together a squad this season to achieve at least the Europa League. I still think that would be very much a success if they can do that, considering the position that they have been in previous years. And I think they probably need it to strengthen the squad and to keep players that they already have, like Kondogbia, and obviously the dream is keeping Guedes. So yeah, hopefully they can get in Europe, and I think Spain as La Liga, Spanish football needs a strong Valencia. So I think it's very important that they get into Europe. Europa League is completely fine, and Champions League would just be an immense success.
I mean, they'll need to see if they can get these injured players back out as soon as possible.
They need Murillo. Murillo feels Murillo has been on forever, and they really, really need him back.
Right, so we'll move on to the final game, the Monday night game. Malaga playing on a Monday night yet again. I mean, Malaga fans, I mean, it seems once in a blue moon that they actually do have a league game on a Saturday or a Sunday. This was a huge game, massive, probably the most high-stakes game of the season for both of these two teams, given that they are fighting just tooth and nail in the basement of the division. Las Palmas versus Malaga. Las Palmas needing until stoppage time and a strike from Alan Halilovic, which was a good goal, and yet Roberto was completely baffled all at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive 3 points for Paco Gémez. A point would have been no good to either side, really. I mean, at this point, the fact that Las Palmas picked up 3 points, it means they're now level with Deportivo and in 18th place. They're just 3 points off Levante in 17th place. And it looks like the Great Escape, whisper it quietly, could potentially be on, because their transfer business in January was steady. They've got a coach who demands a lot from them. And, I mean, Levante and Deportivo haven't been convincing for weeks and weeks.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, like you rightly say, I think that last place is going to be interesting, because for me, Depor and Malaga looking to be in a very poor position. There's not really much inspiration there, I don't think, unless something incredible happens with Seedorf. Las Palmas did some good business, and some of their signings were very impressive last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 debuts last night, one for Aguirre Garay, who started the game playing at, playing wherever he fancied, really. but he spent time playing at left back, he spent time playing at right back. He is predominantly right-footed, but did start out on the left. I mean, there's plenty of good things to say about him, but I don't know whether they quite line up with what you'd expect from a professional footballer. But both he and Etebo, they look quite good, really. I mean, they look to match what Gémez would want from his side.
I thought Etebo protected the ball really well. He got his body between the ball and the man really, really well, and he kept Las Palmas in the ascendancy quite a bit.
I mean, both of them, that they always look to be positive on the ball. They look to get forward. Aguirre Garay only looks interested when the ball was going forward. But, I mean, Etebo gave them a little bit of something else in central midfield. I mean, we're used to seeing Jonathan Vieira dictating games and really pulling the strings. But it was interesting to see Etebo, a bit of a different presence. I mean, he can play out wide, he can play up front, he can play behind the striker. It seems like he could basically play anywhere. He's a very versatile player. As you say, at first I wondered, would he be potentially a little bit cumbersome given his frame? But he did everything very, very well. He was quite neat and tidy. I mean, he did obviously give the ball away a few times, but I mean, that's just down to the fact that all of these Las Palmas players, they are asked to take risks, they are asked to cause problems. And, well, that is such a contrast from Malaga. They didn't really look as though they knew they could score at the other end. I mean, they created absolutely nothing. They brought in a variety of strikers, some wide options in the January transfer window. And for what? I mean, after the game, Jose Gonzalez said that he won't give up. But what are they? I don't know. I mean, he said that he won't give up. What is he doing to give up? I mean, it doesn't really.
Yeah, I think they look like they've already given up. That's the problem with Malaga, and has been for a lot of time. Attitude. One team. This was a relegation slog. This was a huge game. This was the biggest game of the season for both teams. Malaga, again, just didn't...
It looked like a friendly for Malaga.
They just look like they don't care. I don't know where it's going to take. They've had several games this season where they've kind of like been needing to win, and even at home as well. And they just haven't. The attitude isn't there. They just don't care. And you know, as long as you've got that attitude, then you're going straight down, and they're getting cut adrift now. And this game was massive for them, and they just didn't look like scoring at all, and their heads went in at nothing. They look very much gone.
I mean, after 22 games, they're bottom of LaLiga. They've got just 13 points, so they're 4 points off both Las Palmas and Deportivo now. They're 7 points from safety. It looks just obscene to think that they could pick up 7 points between now and the end of the season, really. They failed to score in 15 of their LaLiga games this season. I mean, they gave Las Palmas only their third clean sheet of the season in this game. If you can't score against Las Palmas, I mean, who can you score against?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the problem. You know, Las Palmas, you know, they before this game had just kept 2 clean sheets in the league. But the problem was Malaga failed to score in 15 games. They've now failed to score in 15 games this season. So, you know, that's where the problem lies, I think. And the fact that they couldn't test Las Palmas and pull them apart a little bit was just extraordinary, and they are just major trouble.
I mean, it's just embarrassing, really, given that we've seen Las Palmas a few times, obviously now under James in the league. They always look as though they've got a mistake in them. They always look as though they're vulnerable to counterattacks. They look vulnerable to the fact that if you kind of cut them apart in midfield, that everything else falls away. And they didn't have any moments like this in this game whatsoever. It was bizarre. They looked kind of secure almost. And for Las Palmas, with the system they employ, to look secure, I mean, it asks a lot more questions of Malaga than it does kind of give you reasons to praise James.
It was about being positive as well, you know, and they just they exuded positivity from the first minute, and that's why they won the game. I know it was maybe a degree of fortune about the things, how they won it, but still, you know, their attitude was right across the course of the game, and they probably scored what they deserved.
Yeah, I mean, Chichizola was forced into one good save throughout the entire game. Yeah. Aside from that, they really didn't create anything whatsoever. No. We did see a debut. I mean, Idea Brown did start up front, didn't really get hold of the ball whatsoever throughout the entire game.
Very, very isolated, I think. I think a player like him, you know, he needs support around him, but he just didn't have it at all, you know.
I mean, and then we did see as well off the bench another debut for Isaac Success, who looks to have put on even more size since being in England, to be honest. I mean, he looked a bit like a fridge, but he didn't really get on the ball all too much either. And it's really just lacklustre because you've got debutants for Las Palmas coming in like Etebo, like Iguiragaray, and really showing what they're about. And we just left wondering. I mean, the transfer business for Malaga in the summer was poor. In January, it looked poor again. I mean, it's not as if they're kind of skimping in terms of the fact that, you know, some of these players are on some decent wages. It's obviously the case that, you know, they haven't reinvested money from, you know, deals for Camacho, deals for Fornals. They've not brought in any central midfield talent of note. And I think that's what it all boils down to. And it will be a shame because this squad in general aren't, you know, they're not world beaters by any means, but they're not that bad.
No.
It's more down to, I think that if Malaga went down, it'd be interesting to see which of the clubs would pick meat off the corpse, as it were, because they have got some interesting players. And I mean, the likes of Juanpi, who we've barely seen this season, he came off the bench in this game. I mean, he's a forgotten man. He's a very tidy little player.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it all just boils down to in central midfield, they just don't really have a lot. I mean, Recio was forced off through injury in this game. That's a big blow for them. They've just got the likes of Adrian, Manuel Atura, Esteban Rolon's barely been given a chance. They've just got nothing in central midfield, and I think that you can buy all of the strikers, loan in all of the talent in the world, bring in mercenaries, bring in Malagueños, and it won't change anything because they've got no one to dictate this team at all.
No, absolutely not. And I think this situation, the seeds of which were sown probably in the summer when they weren't, like you mentioned, they just weren't proactive enough in terms of replacing the talent that they have lost. They were given the last chance in January to, you know, make amends for that, and I just don't think they have. And we could probably say Malaga, you know, they would confirm.
I think they're down. I mean, if anyone wants to disagree, I mean, make sure that
please make your case, because I want to hear it as well. You know, convince me, please. I would love that.
I mean, well, that's all the games that we've talked through. Things are kind of, I suppose, more interesting really in terms of the relegation battle than the title race this season. We've got the likes of Las Palmas, Deportivo, Levante. Still, you know, Alaves are still kind of involved, despite the fact that they've really turned things around recently. But make sure that you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, primarily on Twitter. I mean, let us know, who do you think are going to be going down? I mean, for me, I think Malaga, they're as good as gone. I think Las Palmas, they've got a little bit of something about them where they could be potentially able to, you know, leapfrog the likes of Deportivo and Levante, who really don't have anything special about them at all. And any team with Jonathan Vieira in, they've got half a chance. So there we go. We've got another bonus podcast coming out this week. Around about a week and a half ago, we asked you guys for some questions and some suggestions for some young players in LaLiga to talk about, all of the players under the age of 23. So that's going to be coming out later this week. Keep an ear out for that. And we will talk to you again soon.